Thank you, Jonathan and tech team, for putting that bumper together. Real love, real unity. That's what we're going to talk about today. It's Valentine's Day. What else is there to talk about but love? Huh? Love. I want to tell you everything I know about love, so it's going to take about 2 minutes, and then after that I'm just going to ramble a little bit, okay? So here's what I know about love. I know that love is real, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I know that love is complicated. The third thing I know about love is that love is really complicated. And the fourth thing that I know about love, it works. So with that in mind, let's talk about love. The Bible has several words that it uses for love. The Greeks have like 6 words. I'm going to talk about 2 of them. I'm going to talk about romantic love, and I'm going to talk about agape love, which is unconditional love. We know that there's a lot of different loves in between that, but these are the 2 that I want to focus on today. I want to focus on the romantic love because, you know, I think Valentine's Day is a day that we need to be reminded that love is still alive, it's still real, it's still out there, it's happening. We've been through a tough year, and I know that the staff here at Anona, we've had to adjust and transition. We've had to learn how to do funerals differently, how to do grieving differently, how to meet in groups teaching. It's just been tough. And when you're around that kind of adjustment, it causes adjustment issues. But a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to officiate in a wedding. And it was a beautiful wedding. It was out at the Botanical Gardens and outdoors, a very small crowd, but it was so beautiful. And when I do outdoor weddings, a lot of times I like to do what's called the sand ceremony, where the couple chooses a couple of contrasting colors of sand, and they will pour it into a single vase, one at a time, where it will layer and it'll make kind of a piece of art. It's a one-of-a-kind piece of art. And they asked me if I would pour in between each one of them the white sand to indicate the Holy Spirit is there with them, making them one. It was a beautiful ceremony, and we were doing the vows and the rings, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I couldn't explain it at the time, but I got choked up and I started crying. I really had to control myself, and I said, where's this coming from? Now, I'm a counselor. I know that when tears just come unexpectedly, it's probably depression. But that wasn't the case. A couple days later, I realized that we've been in this pattern of adjusting and changing, and anxiety and stress, and is catching up with people. To just have a break and to celebrate the love of 2 young people whose lives are coming together, it was overwhelming to me. And I just loved it. And I usually don't spend a whole lot of time at receptions and everything, but I made the trip downtown to St. Pete, and they had a room reserved. I stayed the whole time, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And so it reminded me that we need more of those. And in a couple of weeks, I get to do another wedding, and this wedding is going to be special as well. I can't wait for it. Our very own Kimberly Newby and Greg Martin, Colonel, retired. You salute him, Mary? Kimberly, do you salute? She really insults him because she calls him a captain, and he's a colonel. Hey, yes, captain, he's a colonel. But I'm looking forward to that. It's not going to be easy, though, because, when I get to that part where I tell them they have to wear their mask the whole honeymoon, that's going to be tough, Think you can handle that, Kimberly? Well, a few weeks ago, last year, Jack preached a sermon where he challenged us, if you'll remember. He said, if you could put on your tombstone what you want, what would you have put on your tombstone? And I emailed him back, and I said immediately, Jack, here's what I would like on my tombstone. He was a student of love. And he learned that the more he gave, the more he received. And that is a principle that God created in this whole concept called love. Richard preached a sermon in January of this year, and he says, I want you to choose a word that I want you to focus on this year in 2021, and let that word kind of define who you are. And immediately I got back to Richard and I said, the word care comes to my mind. This is the word that I want to focus on this year, to find new and creative ways to care for people. We have a group that's been volunteering for over a year now, and it's called the Legacy Care Team. We've made probably 45,000 phone calls to members of our congregation. Each week we try to check in to just say, how are you doing? You okay? Is there anything that we can do? And that has been a connection that has made a huge difference. But it takes a lot of labor. It's a labor of love. So I want to share with you my first memory of romantic love and agape or unconditional love. It happened in the same day, at the same time, and it was on Valentine's Day when I was in kindergarten. What are you laughing at, Chuck? I was in kindergarten, probably 20 years ago. I don't know. But back then, what we used to do, the teacher would give us, the names of all the students in the class, and we'd go home and tell our parents that we need to have 32 Valentine cards, and then I would write the name on them, to so-and-so from Terry, and put it in there, and it'd be a nice little card. But there was one girl in the class, her name was Cindy. I mean, God just put this little angel right there just for me to have a romantic thought about, and I was going to ask her to be my Valentine. And so I wrote her a special note, and couldn't wait to give it to her and put that in her bag so she knew that was from me, and I signed it. But, like I did a lot of times as a kindergarten, and our room was circular, it was round, and in the back of the class was a door that went to the restroom. And, as a kid, I would always wait way too long to go to the bathroom. And I was so excited about giving Cindy my card, and all of a sudden I realized, man, I need to go to the bathroom. So I raised my hand and I said, Miss Summers, I said, I need to go to the bathroom. Can I go to the bathroom? She said, sure. And so I jumped up, I ran, I opened this big door, and it closed and slammed on my fingers. And it really hurt. And I was sitting there thinking, I don't know what is going to be more humiliating for me, for Cindy to see me cry or wet my pants. But that's when Miss Summers came to my rescue, and she saw the situation. She literally picked me up, and she held me and hugged me, brought me to her body, and she told the class that Terry's been hurt. I'm going to take him to the office. And she hid my embarrassment from the class where they couldn't see what I had done. And in that moment, I was having all these, kindergarten feelings for little Cindy. I wanted her to be my partner when we had square dancing coming up. And it went from that to somebody stepping in to rescue me from, in my mind as a kindergartner, was a crisis, a tragic moment. And we go through that. So the things that I want to share with you this morning about love, all the things that I know. First of all, I know that love is real. I know it's complicated. I know that it's really complicated, but I know it works. So with that, I want to go to the scripture this morning in the Gospel of Matthew. In the Gospel of Matthew, it's chapter 22. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. You see these masks that we have, that we wear, that says, love your neighbor. But Jesus said more than that. Jesus said, love your neighbor, how? As you love yourself. And that really is the key. That's the big difference. Because even the Pharisees said, well, who is my neighbor? And in reality, Jesus wasn't focusing on the neighbor. He was focusing on a principle that God created into every human being. Because love is not a gene that you're born with in your body. Love is the DNA of God that He puts in your soul. God created us to love and to be loved. The very first book that I read when I started counseling was written by a mentor and friend of mine, Dr. Harold Waking. Dr. Harold Waking started the Christian Counseling Network down in South St. Pete years and years ago. And he wrote a book called Created to Love and to Be Loved. And he taught me so much in that little simple book about the different facets of love. But the biggest problem that we have in counseling a lot of times is dealing with people with low self-esteem, low self-worth, poor identity. And historically, the Jews have never had a problem with that. Ever since the time of Abraham. The Israelites always knew that they were the chosen, they were the blessed. They were the ones that God was going to work through to bring His kingdom and His message. And so, but a lot of times in Western theology and in our culture today, as Christians and believers, we need to realize that the principle that Jesus told the Pharisees are principles that He's trying to tell us. That our self-worth, our self-esteem is defined in our connection with God. And so it's in that we can move in our relationships from romantic love into complicated love. Because sometimes love can get very, very complicated. The second thing that I'm talking about here is that the realization that honeymoons don't last forever. I mean, the contemporary band sang a song, it's easy to fall in love, but it's hard to stay in love. It was a powerful song. Because it takes work. It takes commitment. And many times we take our lovers and our spouses for granted. And I am reminded that even today there are so many in our congregation that is spending the first Valentine's Day without their Valentine. And it is a tremendous memory for so many. But it reminds them that what they had was real. It was real. That's why I believe it, because I see it. I've experienced it. I know that it is real. And I do know that it gets complicated. 1 Corinthians 13 says, the love chapter says, love does not seek its own way. And when we understand what Paul was saying about love, he was saying that we got to get beyond words. We got to get beyond words. He said that if I speak in the language of men and angels and speak in tongues, but I don't have love, he said, I'm just making noise. He said, if I have faith to move mountains, but I lack love, he says, I've really not accomplished anything. If I burn my body or sacrifice and give all I have to the poor, but I don't have love, I've gained nothing. So Jesus and the Apostle Paul and all through the scriptures is trying to connect us to the source of love. Jesus told us what we should do. He said it's a commandment to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. It's a commandment to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so if it's a commandment and this is something we should do, then where do we go to find this love? Where do we go to find this love? Well, 1 John chapter 4 says, Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. God is love. He's the author of love. When people ask me, do you believe in God? I said, do you believe in love? Because I can get involved in all kinds of theological debates with other religions and whatever, but it really comes down to one thing. God is love. There's a lot of imitators. There's a lot of ways that man has tried to make love something that we've created and come up with, but it doesn't work. What works is that divine connection with God. A wedding I did several years ago, it was like a wedding out of a storybook. It was at the Vinoy Hotel. The bride came in a carriage with a horse, and we were out in the wedding yard out on the west side of the Vinoy. The tent, the flowers, the music, it was just unbelievable, just like a storybook. And the groom's name was Ted, the bride was Gail. They were very good friends of ours. We had known them for years. We partied together, we traveled together, and we were all there celebrating their wedding. And he was tall and handsome, and she was just beautiful, gorgeous bride and groom. And it was the wedding of a lifetime. And about 30 days later, I get a call from Ted. Terry, can we go to lunch? I said, sure. We go to lunch, and he said, Gail was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And the doctors only give her a few months to live. And he just said, I didn't sign up for this. I don't know if I can do it. And I just said, Ted, no, you can't do this. I can't do it either. But I know someone who can, and we will get through this. And I think it was like 16 months Gail lived, and we would go visit as often as we could, and we would sit at the house, and we watched Gail, this beautiful body, dissolve into, a skeleton. But I saw Ted's heart. He went from that romantic love to this complicated, really complicated love. And he poured it out. And God blessed it. The more he gave, the more he received. And we shared that parting. We were there when she drew her last breath. And we even gave God thanks for the life and the love that Gail gave us in her time here with us. That was tough. But the more our hearts broke, the more God gave us the capacity to enlarge and to grow. And Ted's faith even grew in that. I can't explain how that works. I can't. Only God can. But I know that in that route from romantic love to unconditional agape love, there's a big leap. It's a growth. It's a process. And I think that when we move towards the unconditional love, the romantic love even gets better, gets stronger. Because our relationship is not built on a Disney World illusion. It's built on a relationship with a real human being. And so the leap that I'm going to take right now is going from marriage and romantic love into where we are as a country and where we are as a congregation. This is Black History Month, and we have been challenged. We have this group that meets called Stand Up Anona. And ever since the George Floyd episode with the protests and the riots and the unrest in our country, we're trying to find out who we are, examine ourselves here at Anona. And so Black History Month, it takes us to places that we don't really want to go. But our country is in a crisis. I have a friend who is a member of our church. And Kim, I hope you're watching. Kim Townsell. We talk a couple times every week. Kim Townsell is an international trainer for Kingian nonviolence. Twice, Kim Townsell has brought Dr. Bernard Lafayette to our church to do training in nonviolence, Kingian nonviolence training. Dr. Bernard Lafayette was one of three people in the top senior leaders of Martin Luther King Jr.'s group of advisors. It was Martin Luther King Jr., it was John Lewis, and it was Dr. Bernard Lafayette. If you go back and look at the old films of the 1960s where they did the peace marches and everything, you will see John Lewis, Bernard Lafayette, and you will see Martin Luther King Jr. And I told Kim, I said, I wish that Martin Luther King Jr. were still alive today so he could continue to share that dream with us. Is it real? Can people of different cultures and race really love each other? And the church has gone through this for thousands of years. It's nothing new. But this is something that's right with us today, and we're just being challenged to look in ourselves and do that examination. I have taught and I've read this little book that came out years ago by Chapman called The 5 Languages of Love. And the 5 languages of love is words of affirmation, acts of service, time, quality time, gifts, and touch. And Chapman kind of builds a pretty good defense that everybody, just like a personality, leans more or less towards one of these languages of love. And I remember when June and I were going through that, I came home one Tuesday night and I bought her a card. It wasn't any special day, it was just a Tuesday evening. Bought her some flowers, and I wrote these wonderful words down. I mean, it was just, poetry in motion here. I'm writing these words down. I come home, I give her the flowers, and I give her the card, and I'm all proud of myself. And she reads it, and she says, "It's nice, but that's just words." And, I said, "But they're my words. Aren't they beautiful?" And she said, "If you really want to show me that you love me," she said, "you can help me with some things around here." And she loved to have flowers out in the yard. She says, "When I get my hands in that soil, I feel like I'm close to God." And I said, "When I grew up and my dad was a yard man and I got my hands in the soil, I felt like I was close to Satan because he's the one that put those weeds there." But that next Saturday, my usual Saturday routine is I'd get up and go play golf with the guys. That Saturday I got up, I went out in the garage, got my gloves, got the tools, and I started to go out in the yard. And she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go out in the yard and make love to you for about 3 hours." And I pulled weeds and worked, acts of service, I was sweating. I hated every minute of it. But you know what? When I got done, she gave me my love language. Thank you. Words of affirmation. You don't know what that means to me. Now, my first thoughts were, you get off pretty easy here. You just get to say words of affirmation. I had to go out and sweat for 3 hours. I want you to look at your life. This is Black History Month. It's not about going back and trying to change history. It's looking at what America was built on, our values. And I just want to close by saying that love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13 again says, there's 3 things that remain: faith, hope, and love. And love is greater than all of these because love never fails, because it comes from God. One of my favorite songs that I've come to enjoy, and I want to challenge you to go, if you're online, look up Whitney Phipps, Phipps, Whitney Phipps, Amazing Grace. And listen to Whitney Phipps, an African-American man with a deep baritone voice, as he tells the story of John Newton, who was a captain of a slave ship. And hauling slaves from West Africa to the United States was where he made his money and income. But somehow God got a hold of his life, and he penned those words, "Amazing Grace." And then Whitney says, "I went to the Library of Congress and I looked up Amazing Grace, and it says words, John Newton, melody unknown." He says, "You know that every Negro spiritual is sung on 5 notes. It's called the pentatonic scale, and it's the black notes on the piano." He says, "You have the entire do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But," he says, "we've got 5 notes that we've learned." And he said, "You can almost play any song on those 5 notes." And so he says, "I can just feel the pathos of that song, that melody coming out of the bow of that ship." And I put the words to it, and he begins to sing Amazing Grace. And when it gets to the end of it, you're connected to a God that can help us to overcome any obstacle that separates his children one from another. We are one in Christ. Study the lives of those who have gone on before you that inspire you. And this week, as we focus on the power of love, the 2 principles that Jesus talked about, love God, love self. And when you get those 2 things in place and you have a healthy self-esteem and identity, not a narcissistic, self-centered. You can go to Barnes & Noble and there's rack after rack of books called self-help. But I've yet to find a rack that says help others. And this is what love does. Love gives. And the more you give, the more you receive. If you have a Valentine with you today, thank God for that Valentine and love her. Love him. Love each other. If you have a family member or a neighbor or someone who needs an extended just a greeting of acknowledgement that I know that you're here and I'm here for you. Have a great week. Be blessed, but know that those principles, they're true. And they will help you through any obstacle in this life because it's complicated. It's really complicated, but it's real. And God will give you the grace to go through it. May God bless you. May God give you that amazing grace this week that will carry you through and enable you to take the love that He has put into your heart and your soul so that you can give it and share it with someone else. God bless you this week.